The legendary Instructor. The Academy's pride. Commander Thrakos stood 7 feet tall on the polished metal deck of the Galactic Military Academy, his 4 arms crossed in perfect symmetry across his armored chest. The Zentorian warrior had never lost a combat training session in his 15 years as head instructor. Not once. His reputation stretched across 12 star systems, and cadets from the most elite military families considered it an honor just to be defeated by him. The unbeatable record. The Academy's training records showed the truth in cold, hard numbers. Thrakos had trained over 3,000 cadets from 47 different species. Carillion shock troops with their diamond-hard exoskeletons. Vesperian mind warriors who could predict their opponents' moves before they made them. Andromedian berserkers whose rage made them nearly invincible. All of them had fallen before Thrakos' superior combat skills. His training methods were legendary throughout the galaxy. The commander could fight with any weapon ever created, master any combat style in minutes, and adapt to any opponent's weaknesses faster than most beings could blink. His natural Zentorian abilities included enhanced reflexes, superior strength, and the ability to process tactical information at superhuman speeds. The arrival of the humans. Today was different. Today, the Academy would receive its first group of human exchange students from the recently discovered planet called Earth. Thrakos had read their files with growing amusement. These soft-bodied creatures from a backwater world had somehow managed to achieve spaceflight, but their combat records were laughably primitive. Lieutenant Beck, his Terran aide, approached with visible nervousness. "Sir, the human transport has docked. The exchange students are ready for processing." Thrakos' mandibles clicked in what passed for laughter among his species. Exchange students. The Council's diplomatic games never cease to amaze me. What exactly do they expect to learn here? First impressions. The human delegation consisted of 6 individuals, each one more unremarkable than the last. They walked with confidence, but Thrakos could see the uncertainty in their eyes as they took in the Academy's advanced training facilities. Their leader, according to the files, was someone called Marcus Reed, a career soldier from Earth's military forces. Reed stood about 6 feet tall, with broad shoulders and calloused hands that spoke of physical training. His dark hair was cut in a military style, and his green eyes held a steady gaze that met Thrakos' own without flinching. Still, the commander noted, he showed no signs of the enhanced physical modifications that marked true warriors. The challenge begins. "So," Thrakos said, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had personally ended 3 interstellar conflicts, "you are the humans we've heard so much about. I trust you understand that this academy maintains the highest standards in the galaxy. We do not lower our requirements for anyone." Marcus Reed stepped forward, his voice calm and respectful. "We understand, Commander. We're here to learn and prove ourselves worthy of the Academy's training." The other cadets in the assembly hall began to murmur among themselves. A group of Carillion warriors, their scaled hides gleaming under the artificial lighting, exchanged what were clearly dismissive comments about the humans' chances of survival. The first test. Thrakos decided to begin with a simple demonstration. He selected a standard combat staff from the weapons rack and moved to the center of the training circle. "Reed, step forward. Let's see what Earth's finest has to offer." The human accepted a similar weapon and took a basic fighting stance. Thrakos noted the proper grip and balanced posture, but nothing that suggested any real skill. The commander had seen this same scenario played out thousands of times with cadets from across the galaxy. What happened next should have been predictable. Thrakos launched into his opening sequence, a series of strikes designed to test his opponent's reflexes and defensive capabilities. The staff moved like liquid lightning in his 4 hands, creating a blur of motion that few beings could follow, let alone counter. An unexpected response. But Marcus Reed did something that caught Thrakos completely off guard. Instead of attempting to block or parry the attacks, the human simply stepped backward and to the side, allowing the staff to pass harmlessly through the space where he had been standing. It was such a simple movement that it took Thrakos a moment to realize what had happened. The commander recovered quickly and pressed his attack, using more complex combinations that should have overwhelmed any novice fighter. But Reed continued his strange defensive strategy, moving with economy and precision that suggested years of training in a completely different combat philosophy. Seeds of doubt. For the first time in 15 years, Commander Thrakos found himself having to think about his attacks instead of relying on pure instinct and superior ability. The human wasn't trying to match him strength for strength or speed for speed. Instead, Reed was doing something that no other cadet had ever attempted. He was treating the combat as a puzzle to be solved rather than a contest to be won. The demonstration ended with both fighters still standing, though Thrakos had clearly dominated the exchange. But as the commander looked into Reed's eyes, he saw something that disturbed him more than any defeat could have. The human was studying him, learning from every exchange, cataloging weaknesses that Thrakos didn't even know he possessed. The beginning of change. As the human cadets filed out of the training hall, Thrakos found himself wondering if perhaps these soft-bodied creatures from Earth might offer more of a challenge than he had initially thought. The Academy's unbeatable instructor was about to discover that sometimes the greatest victories come not from superior strength or speed, but from the ability to think differently about the nature of combat itself. The stage was set for a confrontation that would change everything both species thought they knew about warfare, strategy, and the true meaning of strength. First contact with failure. The morning after. Marcus Reed stood in the human quarters, watching the artificial sunrise through the Academy's massive viewing port. His body ached from the previous day's demonstration, but his mind was racing with possibilities. The other humans were still sleeping, but Reed had been awake for hours, analyzing every moment of his encounter with Commander Thrakos. His military background had taught him to study his opponents carefully. 20 years of service in Earth's special forces had shown him that the strongest enemy wasn't always the most dangerous one. Sometimes, the most dangerous enemy was the one who underestimated you. The Academy's routine. The Academy operated on a strict schedule that had been refined over 2 centuries. Morning exercises began at 0600 Galactic Standard Time, followed by weapons training, tactical instruction, and combat simulations. The human cadets were expected to keep up with beings who had evolved for warfare, creatures whose natural abilities far exceeded human limitations. Reed's team consisted of 5 other humans, each chosen for their unique skills. There was James Torres, a former Marine with expertise in close-quarters combat. Lisa Chong, a pilot who had served in Earth's Deep Space Reconnaissance Division. David Park, an engineer who understood human technology better than anyone alive. Rachel Williams, a medic with field experience in hostile environments. And Thomas Gray, a communication specialist who could speak 17 different languages. The first real test. Commander Thrakos had designed a special training program for the human cadets, one that would push them beyond their physical and mental limits. The first exercise involved navigating a 3-dimensional maze while under fire from automated defense systems. It was a test that typically took new cadets several weeks to master. Humans first, Thrakos announced, his voice echoing through the training chamber. Let's see how your species handles real combat pressure. The maze was a nightmare of spinning platforms, laser barriers, and gravity wells that could disorient even the most experienced warriors. Reed watched as the other alien cadets demonstrated their natural abilities, leaping incredible distances, phasing through solid barriers, or using their enhanced strength to smash through obstacles. Human adaptation. When it was Reed's turn, he did something that surprised everyone watching. Instead of rushing into the maze like the other cadets, he spent several minutes at the entrance, studying the pattern of the automated defenses. He noted the timing of the laser sweeps, the rotation speed of the platforms, and the intervals between the gravity well activations. "Are you planning to analyze it all day, human?" called out one of the Krillian cadets. "Or are you going to show us what Earth's warriors can do?" Reed ignored the taunts and entered the maze at a steady, measured pace. He moved through the obstacles like water flowing around rocks, never fighting the system but always finding the path of least resistance. When a laser barrier blocked his path, he waited for the sweep pattern to create an opening. When a gravity well threatened to pull him off course, he used its force to redirect his momentum toward his goal. The unexpected success. What should have taken a novice cadet 45 minutes to complete, Reed finished in 23 minutes. It wasn't the fastest time ever recorded, but it was faster than any first-time attempt by a non-enhanced being. More importantly, he had accomplished it without taking a single hit from the defense systems. The training chamber fell silent as Reed emerged from the maze exit. Even Commander Thrakos seemed momentarily stunned by the performance. The human hadn't relied on superior strength or speed, but on patience, observation, and tactical thinking. The commander's reaction. Thrakos called Reed to the center of the training floor. "Explain your method, human. How did you know when to move and when to wait?" Reed's response was simple but profound. "I watched the system, Commander. Everything has a pattern, even chaos. Once you understand the pattern, you can work with it instead of against it." The alien cadets exchanged glances. This was not how combat training was supposed to work. Warriors were meant to overcome obstacles through force, not by finding clever ways around them. The human approach seemed almost like cheating, though technically, Reed had followed all the rules. Growing frustration. Over the following days, the human cadets continued to surprise everyone at the academy. They couldn't match the raw physical capabilities of their alien counterparts, but they consistently found innovative solutions to seemingly impossible problems. They worked together as a team in ways that the more individualistic alien warriors couldn't understand. During weapons training, they adapted human military tactics to alien technology. In tactical simulations, they used their knowledge of human warfare to create strategies that caught their opponents off guard. Most frustrating of all, they seemed to learn from every defeat, coming back stronger and more prepared each time. The Instructor's dilemma. Commander Thrakos found himself facing a problem he had never encountered before. His training methods were designed to break down cadets and rebuild them according to proven galactic military doctrine. But the humans weren't breaking down. Instead, they were adapting, evolving, and finding ways to turn their weaknesses into strengths. The other instructors began to notice the change in Thrakos's demeanor. He spent hours reviewing training footage, analyzing the human cadets' performance, and trying to understand how these supposedly inferior beings were consistently exceeding expectations. The challenge grows. As the weeks passed, it became clear that the human cadets were not just surviving the Academy's brutal training regimen, they were thriving. Their unorthodox approaches were beginning to influence the other cadets, who started to question whether brute force was always the best solution to every problem. Reed, in particular, had become a figure of fascination and frustration for Commander Thrakos. The human's quiet confidence and analytical approach to combat represented everything the Zentorian warrior thought he understood about warfare. Yet somehow, this soft-bodied creature from a backwater planet was forcing him to reconsider fundamental assumptions about military training and combat effectiveness. The Academy's unbeatable instructor was beginning to realize that his next real test wouldn't come from the human cadet's ability to learn his methods, but from his own ability to understand theirs. The unexpected challenge. A new player enters. Lieutenant Colonel Hayes arrived at the Academy on a routine inspection, but his presence immediately changed the dynamics of the human training program. Unlike the cadets, Hayes was a career military officer with 30 years of experience in Earth's armed forces. He had fought in conflicts across known space and had earned a reputation as one of humanity's most innovative tactical minds. Hayes was a tall, lean man with graying hair and sharp blue eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. His dress uniform bore the insignia of Earth's Special Operations Command, and his calm demeanor suggested someone who had seen enough combat to know when to fight and when to think. The inspection begins. Commander Thrakos welcomed Hayes with the courtesy due to a visiting officer, but his mandibles clicked with barely concealed irritation. The human cadets had been disrupting his carefully structured training program for weeks, and now their superiors were sending observers to evaluate his methods. "Colonel Hayes," Thrako said, his forearms folded across his chest, "I trust you'll find our training methods educational. Your cadets have been quite the learning experience for all of us." Hayes smiled politely. "I'm sure they have, Commander. Humans have a tendency to approach problems from unexpected angles. I hope they haven't been too much trouble." The diplomatic words carried an undertone that wasn't lost on the Zentorian warrior. Hayes was here to evaluate more than just the human cadets' progress. He was studying the Academy's methods and determining whether they were suitable for training human warriors. Observing the training. Hayes spent his first day watching the standard training exercises, taking notes on everything from the equipment used to the instructional methods employed. He observed combat drills, tactical simulations, and weapons training with the eye of someone who understood both the theory and practice of military education. What he saw troubled him. The Academy's training was designed for species with natural advantages that humans simply didn't possess. The cadets were expected to compete directly with beings who had evolved for warfare, using methods that played to alien strengths rather than human capabilities. During a particularly brutal hand-to-hand combat exercise, Hayes watched as Marcus Reed faced off against a Carillion shock trooper whose exoskeleton made him nearly invulnerable to physical attacks. Reed's strategy was clever, using the alien's weight and momentum against him, but it was clear that the human was fighting at a severe disadvantage. The private meeting. That evening, Hayes requested a private meeting with Commander Thrakos. The two officers met in the Academy's conference room, a neutral space decorated with battle honors from across the galaxy. "Commander," Hayes began, "I've been observing your training methods, and I have some concerns about their effectiveness for human cadets." Thrakos's compound eyes fixed on the human officer. "Your cadets are performing adequately, Colonel. Better than adequately, in some cases. They're learning to overcome their natural limitations." Hayes leaned forward slightly. "With respect, Commander, I don't think you understand what those limitations really are. Or more importantly, what our advantages might be." The philosophical debate. What followed was a discussion that would reshape both officers' understanding of combat training. Hayes explained that human military doctrine had evolved differently from galactic standard practices because humans lacked the natural weapons and armor that most alien species possessed. "We developed tactics based on tool use, teamwork, and adaptability," Hayes said. "Our greatest strength isn't individual combat prowess, it's our ability to work together and find creative solutions to impossible problems." Thrakos listened with growing interest. "Are you suggesting that our training methods are inappropriate for your species?" "I'm suggesting that you're training our people to fight like aliens instead of teaching them to fight like humans," Hayes replied. "And that's a waste of their potential." The proposal. Hayes had come prepared with a proposal that would change everything. He suggested implementing a parallel training program that would focus on human strengths while still meeting the Academy's rigorous standards. The program would emphasize teamwork, tactical flexibility, and the innovative use of technology. "Give me 2 weeks," Hayes said. "Let me show you what humans can do when they're allowed to fight like humans instead of trying to imitate other species." Commander Thrakos was intrigued despite himself. His warrior's pride was challenged by the suggestion that his methods might be improved, but his intellectual curiosity was stronger. "What exactly are you proposing, Colonel?" "The new training regimen." Hayes outlined a training program that would revolutionize the Academy's approach to human cadets. Instead of individual combat trials, the humans would face challenges designed for small unit tactics. Instead of trying to match alien physical capabilities, they would be allowed to use their technological advantages and strategic thinking. The program would include scenarios based on actual human military history, from ancient battles to modern conflicts. It would teach alien cadets about human warfare while allowing human cadets to demonstrate their true capabilities. Your current methods are producing competent soldiers, Hayes explained. But I believe we can produce something better. We can produce warriors who think differently, fight differently, and win differently. The commander's decision. Thrakos found himself facing a decision that would challenge everything he thought he knew about military training. For 15 years, he had used the same methods to train warriors from across the galaxy. Those methods had produced countless successful graduates and had earned him a reputation as the Academy's most effective instructor. But the human cadets had shown him something he had never seen before. They had demonstrated that there were different ways to approach combat, different definitions of strength, and different paths to victory. "Very well, Colonel," Thrakos said finally. "You have your 2 weeks. But understand this, if your methods fail, if your cadets can't meet the Academy's standards, then we return to the proven ways of doing things." Hayes nodded. "Understood, Commander. But I think you'll find that humans have a few surprises left to share." The challenge accepted. As the two officers shook hands, both knew that they were embarking on an experiment that would test more than just training methods. They were challenging fundamental assumptions about warfare, leadership, and the nature of strength itself. The Academy's unbeatable instructor was about to discover that sometimes the greatest victories come not from defeating your opponents, but from learning to see the world through their eyes. And Lieutenant Colonel Hayes was about to prove that humans had earned their place among the stars not through superior strength or speed, but through their ability to adapt, innovate, and overcome any obstacle placed in their path. Breaking the unbreakable. The new warrior. Sergeant Owen Mitchell had been chosen specifically for Lieutenant Colonel Hayes's experimental program. Unlike the other human cadets, Mitchell came from Earth's elite special forces, with a background in unconventional warfare and deep reconnaissance. He was shorter than Marcus Reed, with a wiry build and scars that told stories of battles fought in the shadows between the stars. Mitchell's file made for interesting reading. He had spent 5 years operating behind enemy lines during the Centauri border conflicts, where human forces had been vastly outnumbered and outgunned. His specialty was turning disadvantages into advantages, using guerrilla tactics and psychological warfare to defeat enemies who should have been unbeatable. The modified training ground. Hayes had spent the past 2 weeks completely redesigning the Academy's training facilities. The new course was unlike anything the Academy had ever seen. Instead of individual combat trials, it featured complex scenarios that required teamwork, tactical thinking, and creative problem-solving. The centerpiece was a multi-level combat simulation that recreated the conditions of asymmetric warfare. Cadets would face superior numbers and firepower, but they would also have access to the environment itself as a weapon. Hidden passages, improvised weapons, and electronic warfare capabilities were all part of the challenge. "The rules are simple," Hayes explained to the assembled cadets and instructors. 2 teams of 6 warriors each. The defending team must hold a strategic position for 30 minutes. The attacking team must capture the position or eliminate all defenders. No restrictions on tactics, weapons, or methods. The teams form. Commander Thrakos personally selected the attacking team, choosing the Academy's most elite cadets. The team included 2 Carillion shock troopers, a Vesperian mind warrior, 2 Andromedian berserkers, and a Centaurian combat specialist. Each warrior was a master of their particular combat style, and together they represented the finest military training the galaxy had to offer. The defending team consisted of the 6 human cadets, led by Sergeant Mitchell. They were outnumbered, outgunned, and facing opponents with natural advantages that no amount of training could overcome. By every measure that mattered to galactic military doctrine, they should have been defeated within the first 5 minutes. The battle begins. The attacking team moved with textbook precision, advancing on the human position with coordinated strikes designed to overwhelm the defenders through superior firepower and physical capabilities. Their plan was simple and effective: use their natural advantages to close the distance quickly, then eliminate the humans in direct combat. But Mitchell had other plans. Instead of meeting the attack head-on, the humans disappeared into the complex terrain of the modified training ground. They used the environment itself as both weapon and shield, turning the Academy's own training facility into a maze of defensive positions and choke points. The first surprise came when the Carillion shock troopers triggered an improvised explosive device that had been constructed from standard training equipment. The blast didn't cause serious injury, but it demonstrated that the humans were thinking about the engagement in completely different terms. Unconventional warfare. What followed was a masterclass in asymmetric tactics. The humans never fought fair, never engaged in direct confrontation when they could avoid it, and never allowed their opponents to use their natural advantages effectively. They fought like humans had always fought, with intelligence, creativity, and a willingness to break the rules. Mitchell's team used electronic warfare to disrupt the attackers' communications, forcing them to operate without coordination. They employed psychological tactics, using the training facility's sound system to create confusion and misdirection. They even turned the artificial gravity systems against their opponents, creating zones of altered gravitational fields that disrupted the aliens' movement patterns. The tide turns. 15 minutes into the exercise, the attacking team had not only failed to capture the position, they had lost 2 of their members to human tactics that weren't covered in any military manual. The Vesperian Mind Warrior found his predictive abilities useless against opponents who fought without following established patterns. The Andromedian Berserkers discovered that their rage-fueled strength meant nothing when they couldn't reach their enemies. Commander Thrakos watched the exercise with growing amazement and frustration. His carefully selected team of elite warriors was being systematically defeated by opponents who should have been easy targets. The humans weren't winning through superior strength or speed, they were winning through superior thinking. The final surprise. With 5 minutes remaining in the exercise, the attacking team made a desperate push to capture the human position. They coordinated their remaining forces for a final assault, using everything they had learned about human tactics to mount an overwhelming attack. But Mitchell had been waiting for exactly this moment. The humans had spent the entire exercise not just defending their position, but learning everything they could about their opponent's capabilities and weaknesses. When the final assault began, they were ready. The counterattack was swift and decisive. The humans emerged from concealment at precisely the right moment, using weapons and tactics they had improvised during the battle. They didn't just repel the attack, they eliminated the remaining attackers with a coordinated strike that left no room for response. The impossible victory. When the 30-minute timer expired, the defending team stood victorious. The human cadets had not only held their position, they had achieved something that many observers thought was impossible. They had decisively defeated a team of elite alien warriors using nothing but human intelligence and adaptability. The training facility fell silent as the full implications of what had just happened sank in. The Academy's most advanced cadets had been outfought by beings who possessed none of their natural advantages. The victory wasn't just unexpected, it was revolutionary. The Instructor's realization. Commander Thrakos stood in the center of the training ground, looking at the human cadets who had just accomplished the impossible. For the first time in his career, he was forced to confront the possibility that his understanding of combat, warfare, and military training might be fundamentally incomplete. How? He asked simply, his voice carrying none of its usual authority. Sergeant Mitchell stepped forward, his face serious but respectful. We fought like humans, Commander. We used the advantages we have instead of trying to match advantages we don't have. We worked together, we adapted to changing conditions, and we never gave up. The new understanding. As the cadets filed out of the training facility, Thrakos remained behind with Lieutenant Colonel Hayes. The 2 officers stood in the silence of the modified training ground, both understanding that they had just witnessed something that would change military training throughout the galaxy. Your methods work, Thrakos admitted. But I still don't understand how. How did they defeat warriors who should have been superior in every way? Hayes smiled. Because superiority isn't about individual capabilities, Commander. It's about understanding your strengths and using them effectively. Humans have been fighting impossible battles for thousands of years. We've learned that the key to victory isn't being stronger than your enemy, it's being smarter than your enemy. The Academy's unbeatable instructor had finally met his match, not in a single opponent, but in a completely different way of thinking about combat itself. The humans had shown him that sometimes the greatest strength comes not from what you can do, but from how you think about what you can do.